Hello, and welcome back to Who Moved My Career, the podcast for all you bold professionals out there navigating career shifts and maybe a little reinvention. I'm your host, Nicole, here with my co-host, Arun. Hey, Arun, over on the West Coast.
Hi,
And
Nicole.
today we're tackling a pretty crucial topic, job searching. It feels like so many of us, when we're faced with a layoff or some sort of a job hunt, we kind of fall into what can be categorized as a lone wolf approach, meaning every day you're trolling through LinkedIn, you're going at it alone, you're wondering why you feel terrible by 9:30 in the morning, and we kind of know it's not an effective strategy, but we do it anyway. So, to help us rethink this is one of the authors who has taken both Arun and I and his book, which we'll talk about in a second, through this moment. We are joined with Phyl Terry. Phyl is the author of Never Search Alone. And he argues that searches lead to limited perspective and missed opportunities if we do them wrong. He advocates for building a search party, meaning a whole group of people with diverse expertise to tackle complex questions. Phyl, we are so excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much.
I'm going to start with a little anecdote about how I was introduced to Phyl and this book, which sits right here in my, not the color-coded ones, but the ones on my desk, my books. I was out to lunch with a friend who had recently decided to leave a very lucrative and very big job at a tech company. And he said, "You have to read this book, Never Search Alone." And he slid it over the table, and it was, dog-eared and highlights all over it. And he said, "And you need to get yourself a JSC," which I had no idea what he was talking about at that time. He said, "Oh, it's a job search council." And and we're going to spend a bunch of time talking about this, so I won't delve into it. But it did two things. One is it started the conversation in my own head for realizing that not only was I not alone, but the other people who were in a similar spot were also not alone, which inherently felt comforting. But the second thing it did, Phyl, was it inspired me to join a JSC through phyl.org, but it also inspired us to start something called the Phoenix Club, which you are hearing about on pretty much all of our podcasts. And it's our own kind of JSC. So this is a group of executives that I was connected to from a super different set of backgrounds who help each other go through this. We give each other feedback on our narratives. We help each other negotiate contracts. We listen when we're overwhelmed and we just need to let it all out. And it is the safest, happiest hour of my entire week. And I am entirely grateful to the group of humans that I have assembled. Arun is one of them. But I don't know that I would have gotten there without your book. So I want to say a big thank you to you for reminding us that we don't need to go through anything in this life alone. I'm not positive. It would have certainly taken me a little bit longer to get there without you. So I am super psyched to have you here and hear all the things. Now, if you're smart listeners, you'll just also go buy this book. We would have to be here for 4 hours for Phyl to cover everything in it. So go buy it and do yourself a favor, because it's also important, even if you're not looking for a job, to think through this kind of approach. So I'm going to stop talking so that we can get into it. Phyl, Arun, kick us off.
Thank you, Nicole. And Phyl, welcome.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to Who Moved My Career. As I was sharing during the green room chat, your book, I spent a whole night reading your book.
Last night.
Last night.
You look great.
Last night. And I'm operating in 2 hours of sleep. But the book actually is incredible. It brings so many orthodoxies that we all face to the surface and really challenges it. So thank you. Incredible book, incredible read. We're going to get deeper into it as we chat. So Phyl, let's start off the conversation with this traditional image of a solitary job seeker, which is deeply ingrained in the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
And you argue that there's a different approach.
Yeah.
You argue that lone wolf method probably will not lead you to where you want to go.
Yeah.
And you talk about search party, assembling a search party around you.
Yeah.
Let's just start our conversation with that, right? What do you mean by search party? And also, where did you get this inspiration for writing such incredible work, right? Let's start off with the inspiration, then let's get into the search party.
Okay. Great. So there's three things that you talked about there: the lone wolf and that traditional method, and why it's so deeply ingrained. What's the inspiration for this approach, and what's a job search council or search party? All right. So, and you want me to start the inspiration? My
Yeah.
mother, Arun, my mother.
Oh,
So I dedicate the book to her, and I want to show you a photo of her. This is her at Van Nuys High School in the San Fernando Valley in the 1950s. Okay? Can you see?
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
page is that? Oh, I just saw it. Yep.
That's page 207. 207. Her nickname was Chick, Chic, Chick, to her friends and family. And Arun, she grew up with few resources. Okay, put herself through college, which was difficult for women to do in the 1950s without support. And then the first thing she did when she got her professional job as an elementary school teacher in the San Fernando Valley in 1960 was put together a group of teachers, a support group, a council that then met for 50 years, 50 years, okay, until just the year before she died. And they lived their lives together, their careers, their lives. They really supported each other. And as I was growing up, my mother talked to me about this and about the importance of asking for help. And, like most kids, I ignored this advice from my mom until I too needed to do it. Things kind of fell apart in our family. And in high school, I was separated from my mom. And then in high school, it was just, I had a tough time. And my mom kept telling me, you got to ask for help. So I did. And I asked the teachers for help. And they really came out and just gave me so much support, transformed my life. Ended up getting a scholarship to college, and then I went on from there. In my early 20s, I was a community organizer in New York. I ended up sick. I was in a wheelchair on welfare in a walk-up apartment, Arun, and I assembled a support system around me and asked for help, and was able to transform things. I talk about this in my next book, which actually is about career invention in the age of AI, and we may end up talking a little bit about that. But this inspiration is all from my mom. Yeah.
Thank you, Phyl. That is very incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
And I think the lens here goes beyond the job search world, the economic realities of what we are living in with layoffs and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
The pandemic and caused everybody to kind of live alone. So how are we as a society evolving from living alone, operating alone, to kind of coming back to the collective good of humanity? So there's a bigger theme out here. So thank you for bringing that to the surface.
You're welcome. And the irony, Arun, is that so there's a new movement in academia known as cumulative cultural evolution, or collaborative brain is kind of a simpler way of describing it. It spans economics, psychology, biology, and anthropology. And what they argue is that the success of the human species is not our individual big brain. And there's some very funny research that shows that chimps are actually smarter on intelligence tests than humans. It's really crazy. It's not our individual big brain. It's not our Machiavellian social intelligence. It's our ability to learn from each other and collaborate. So it's both an ancient art, it's what has driven our success, and it's something we have barely tapped into at a self-conscious, intentional level, right? And I think we're moving into a moment where that is more and more important. In fact, I argue that AI means that we need to get better and smarter at leveraging and learning from each other as humans. Okay. This is the world we're coming into. And I think, never search alone is just one element of that, right? It's how you do it in the job search. But there's other, there's many ways to apply this. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's dig into this notion of assembling the search party.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about it?
Sure. So, here's the key insight in the book, Arun, and this goes to what I think both you and Nicole were saying about your responses to the book. It doesn't matter how smart or experienced you are. You could be a public company CEO looking for your next job, and I've worked with those, right? Or you could be a VP of CMO, you could be an early career individual contributor, whatever it might be. No matter what stage or age, no matter what qualifications, Harvard, Stanford, blah, 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 Google, Amazon, blah, 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 OpenAI, blah, blah, blah. When you're looking for a job, no matter who you are, you feel insecure, okay, and fearful and anxious. Everybody experiences this. It's really hard to believe until you actually sit in a group of other job seekers who are your peers and you discover you're not alone. It's not just intellectual. You need to feel that emotional connection. Oh, wow, it's really true, right? And so that's one of the most important reasons to put a job search council together, because there's this hack of human psychology, which is if you put insecure, fearful people together and you ask them to be open and vulnerable about their insecurity and fear, just in so doing, it flips the emotional experience from insecurity and fear to hope and motivation, accountability, and confidence. And these are the most important emotions in the job search, right? If you're insecure and fearful, you will undermine your search in a variety of ways you're not even aware of. If you're confident and have hope and are motivated, you show up differently, right? So I want your listeners to know, it doesn't matter how smart you are, you're going to feel this way, and it's not a problem. It's just a part of what the human experience is like. But if you come together with peers, that can really transform. And here's the other thing, Arun, the peers that you come together with, it's not likely going to be your closest friends because they're not all looking for a job at the same time. And in fact, what I talk about in the book is that strangers bring benefits. So at Phyl.org, we have a volunteer team. So this is a completely free program, Arun. We have launched more than 4,000 job search councils. More than 100,000 hours of volunteer time have gone into this program. We have this amazing team of volunteers. So if your listeners go to Phyl.org, they can sign up and bam, they're going to be in the job search council. They're going to get training, tools, and support. They're even going to get a recruiter network, all at no cost ever. There's people like, oh, is there a trick here? No, I want to make a cultural impact. The volunteer team and I have a huge aspiration for this. We're at 4,000 job search councils, which is pretty cool, right? But we want to be at 1 million. We want this to be as ubiquitous as something like AA, right? That this is the standard way to look for a job.
It's such a gift, Phyl. I mean, to be able to give that to people, because I think, one of the things we talk about in another episode, when I picked up your book, Arun and I were in a similar spot, ex-tech execs, in a tech world where this happens all the time. And then 3 weeks later, we have a bunch of folks who have never been through this before in the federal government who don't know where to start. And their first grab is so different than our first grab. But one of the limiting factors is going to be, most tech companies are generous with severance and things like that. But the free thing really matters for a lot of people. And I think it really matters right now. So just kudos to that, because I think we're going to see more folks coming out of the woodwork, and the government in particular. I'm based in DC, so it's very near and dear to my heart. And
we're getting a surge of people coming in from the government, and I'm so sorry. I'm happy we're here. We do a weekly orientation, and this week we had 250 people in our orientation. Okay. It's just growing, and we're happy to be here, and we're sad that it's so needed. Right. Yeah. So thank you. By the way, just so your listeners know, every single dime of the book sales goes into running the free program. That's my.
Well, and we should give a shout out to Emily, your trusted volunteer, head volunteer. I see her emails. I see her in Slack. She's a winner.
So we have an amazing volunteer team, many, many people, but Emily was the first and is the lead. She's put personally more than 3,000 hours into this, and she has a full-time job where she wins awards and is an incredible team member. But she also, she's incredible. So thank you for bringing her name up.
That's amazing.
So Phyl, I have a very curious question. And the question kind of revolves around AI.
Sure.
Everybody's being disrupted, whether they are a job seeker in a personal life, there's all sorts of things that AI is bringing in, positive as well as negative.
Yeah.
So from the perspective of a search party, how do you see, and you're writing a book about this, and
Yeah.
your next book has everything to do with AI.
Yeah.
How do you see the notion of search party evolving with AI
Yeah.
and the disruptions that it is bringing in?
Well, there will be nothing that ever replaces the power of humans collaborating. That is absolutely the case. Having said that, the kinds of jobs, we're like the farmers of 1798, okay? And a visitor from the future has come to us and said, there's going to be an industrial revolution, and your children and grandchildren, and maybe you, depending on your age, you're going to work in factories, and you're going to build railroads, and you're going to then your children and grandchildren create cars and airplanes, and maybe their grandchildren are going to become management consultants. And the farmer's like, what are you talking about? What is a factory? What's a plane? I didn't know that was possible. Management consultant? What the hell is that? Don't worry, no one actually knows what.
Yeah, I'm not sure we've nailed that yet.
But we're like those farmers of 1798. We cannot even imagine the jobs that are going to be created. What is happening, though, is that and it was true in the early days of the Industrial Revolution, there's a lot of disruption and uncertainty, and there's job loss. People were thrown off the farm in that case. Here, tech jobs are being lost for sure. We're looking at government job loss now. It's happening everywhere, and there's a lot of uncertainty, right? And this is a very difficult moment. So that's why we need this even more. We need those human communities. It's going to there's part of AI is going to put more emphasis on the power of human collaboration. Now, having said that, of course, and this is already happening today, we encourage people to use tools like ChatGPT when they're crafting cover letters and follow-up notes, and when they're looking at their LinkedIn profile, but not to replace what their job search council can do, but to augment it and work together in those formats. It's a hybrid approach, of course. And I'm desperately, asking everyone to certainly start using this and become familiar with it. Get used to using these tools, figuring out how you, in your profession, in your industry, in your niche, it's humans with AI that are going to beat humans without AI. That's what this future is going to look like. And don't let the fear of this paralyze you from finding ways to embrace it. I also want to say I do not believe that AI is going to eliminate every job. I don't even believe it's going to be like 50% of jobs. Eventually, and every time there's been an advance in automation and technology in human history, it has eventually led to economic growth and new job creation, net new job creation. Now, there are people who disagree with me about this, who think this is going to completely wipe all that out. I don't believe that's true. There is so much more to be created that we cannot even imagine. Mm-hmm. There is so much in this world, quote Shakespeare loosely, that we cannot imagine that is possible. I run a program, just to give you an example, another free program, community program called Slow Art Day. It was inspired. My company worked with Steve Jobs years ago, just before and during the iPhone development. And I realized that in a multi-screen, multitasking world, we needed to find ways to, bring people into real life and to expose them to art. Jobs was a big fan of how, visual art was a critical component of how everyone in Silicon Valley should operate. They should expose themselves to art more. And so I started this thing called Slow Art Day. It's turned into this huge thing around the world, 1,500 museums and galleries. The reason I bring this up, and it's coming up April 5th, and I'm doing this big thing in New York on March 21st at the Met, where I've got a couple hundred people coming out for some slow looking sessions that I'm running. But the point is this. There is slow looking is a thing. There's like so much, just even take the experience of looking at art. There's so much more that we can create as humans about how we interact with, how we create art, how we observe art, how we use art, that we haven't even begun to imagine. And that's just one piece of the overall experience. So as we find ways for AI to take over some of the drudgery, I think it's going to release human creativity, and core to that is collaboration, because every innovation is recombination. Okay. Mm-hmm. We can talk about that more. So anyway, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And as you were framing this, I think my brain immediately thought of like when humans discovered seasons and when they discovered farming, it went together, right?
Yeah.
Think of spring, everything is blooming, and
Right.
then summer, it's a beautiful season, and then fall, and then dreary winter comes in, and so think about. I'm thinking about this particular moment, especially what we are going through in our economy, AI disruption, stuff like that. It is our
Winter.
to some extent
Winter.
winter,
Yeah.
but this
So
is a
winter by
time to
discontent.
rescale. This is a time to think about what is it that you want to plant on spring,
Right.
right? How do you decide it, like, and kind of
Yeah.
bring that, and the notion of search party really kind of brings
Yeah.
that together, right?
Totally.
So
And
thank
I was
you.
just thinking about the search party piece, and this is one of the design principles of the Phoenix Club too. But I think there's also, if you're going to get into the winter stage of thinking about what you're going to plant for the spring, you need to understand the farmer's point of view. You need to understand the buyer's point of view. You need to understand what new construction is coming into town or new villages are coming to town. Like, you need a very diverse perspective to be able to help you make the best decisions for those seeds. So I think, like, if we're going to, just absolutely destroy this analogy, it's the collision of different
Yeah.
ideas from different perspectives to help you improve yours.
Yeah,
So
you got to pick the right crops.
that's right. So there's three big ideas in Never Search Alone, which what you said just helps set this up. One is form a job search council. Don't search alone. We're talking about that. The second is candidate market fit, something that I came up with. The idea that, hey, when you're looking for a job, your skills and experience are the product that you're bringing to a market. So you need to understand that market. You need to understand both what you want, the market wants, and what that intersection is, right? So we all know product market fit. So this is just a simple quarter-inch turn application to the job search process, and that's unlocked a lot. And we have a whole bunch of tools and templates. But we tell people you got to go out and figure out how the market sees you. You got to do market research on yourself, and you need a support group to do that, because that sounds a little anxiety-producing, although it's an incredibly beautiful experience when people do it. And then the third idea is what we call play to win-win, which is when you're interviewing and when you're negotiating, do it from a collaborative point of view, what we call play to win-win. And we have some really powerful tools around that. So those are those three big ideas. And I just want to say, with the Phoenix Group, and for any of your listeners, one of the cool things that we've done with Never Search Alone is, so you can go and sign up for a job search council as any individual. Go to phyl.org. Again, it's a free program. But if you have a separate organization, a community like you're creating, and let's say you've set up job search councils on your own, you can register those with us, and we'll get your people all of the same free tools and support and recruiter network and orientation and training. Like, we don't have to do the matching. You can do the matching. It can be your community, and so we have, groups like 5,000 USAID workers who are forming job search councils and then, going ahead and registering those with us, right? We have the
That's
United
great. I
Nations.
didn't know that. That's awesome.
We have the UN approaching us. We have, green energy groups. We have, a whole plethora of different organizations that are taking this concept and forming their own and then registering them with us, which again is free. And I want to just, clarify that that's the case always.
The website is phyl.org.
Yeah. PHYL. Phyl with a Y.
Is there an Instagram or any other channel, Phyl?
We're pretty active on LinkedIn. That's where we tend to be, not so much Instagram.
Arun's favorite platform is LinkedIn. He just can't say enough about it.
Yeah, we've got to, and I have to say, my team tries to keep up with it, but whenever people get a job, they go and post on LinkedIn about the Never Search Alone and Job Search Council process and thank their Job Search Council. It's so fun. Like, we're just overwhelmed with all that. That's just been amazing.
Yeah, I just had one of the people from my JSC just got a new job in product management. Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah. Celebrated him.
So it's and the celebrations are everything also, right?
Totally.
In a job search council, it just really elevates the spirit of everybody.
Elevate everyone's spirit, and we're used to being in a world where we're sort of set up against each other. And the Job Search Council kind of creates a safe zone. It's kind of a separate zone where you're collaborating with each other so that you can compete more effectively out in the marketplace.
So Phyl, one question on the candidate market fit, which really impressed me. And I was thinking about this. You talk about forming a self-assessment of
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about this? This is a very, very important concept that we want to share with our audience.
Yeah. So it's a simple idea, not the first one to propose it, by the way, and a close friend of mine and long time. So my day job is I run councils for people in jobs, primarily in product management and general management, right? So I started that 25 years ago with like Amazon and Google and others. And we've had about 2,500 people go through the program. And one of those people is a woman named Allison Manookin, who was a senior executive at Intuit and then spun out one of their divisions and became the CEO of this company. She's now a professor at Harvard Business School. And 15 years ago, when she was in a job transition, she and I worked together and created something I call the Manookin Two-Pager. And it's this simple concept of, okay, like think about what do you want and what don't you want. And in fact, there's a nice little insight in there. It's easier to start with what you don't want and what you hate. So I ask people like, what do you not want? What are you sure you don't want? What do you hate? Like in terms of both jobs, but also environments and contexts and kinds of, whatever it might be. That's always easier for people. And then think about, okay, what actually do you want? And what are your short-term and long-term goals? And even if you're not sure what they are, just put those down as an initial draft and then go out and sort of have a conversation about this with your network. Go out and do a listening tour. Take your Manookin Two-Pager and talk to people you've worked with in the past. I talk about that as a reverse exit interview. Go and interview the people you used to work with at previous companies about how they see you, and if they were in your shoes, what kinds of things would they pursue in the market? What do they think you like? What do they think you don't like? That kind of thing. And you go and you have like 15 or 20 of these conversations. Now, I just want to acknowledge that people are listening to this or I may be feeling, oh my gosh, that sounds really anxiety producing. How do I do that? Well, your support group is there to help you do that. But once you do a couple of those, there's so much love out there. Everyone has this. When I was, alone in my apartment, on welfare in a wheelchair, okay, in a walk-up apartment, I really discovered that, like, if you're really willing to ask for help, there's such untapped love and support available in our world, especially if you do it well with some level of seriousness and commitment, that people really respond to that. And that's what you discover in the listening tour. The listening tour is not just to get feedback. It certainly is that. But by asking for help, there's a really interesting dynamic that happens, which is that when you ask someone for help, they get more invested in your success. So it's not just that they're giving you feedback. We want that. But we want that relationship to be built. We want a village of support around you. I talk about this concept. I want you to become an I in village. There may not be an I in team, but there is an I in village. Okay. Meaning I want you to be independent, accountable. You're in charge and you have a village of support around you that helps you take every step.
Yeah. And this would eventually lead to a mission, a job mission, a set of OKRs about your mission. And also, one of the things that I do is I write my own OKRs. If I'm really passionate about a posting, a job description, I don't really want to have a conversation with the hiring manager unless I write my own OKR. And this is something that
Is that really something you do? That's amazing, because that is a core idea in the book. Amazing. You figured that out on your own, Arun.
And I actually shared an OKR with a hiring manager.
Absolutely.
And he was like, oh my gosh, I've never even thought about it. So
yeah. How did you develop that idea? I'm very impressed. It's something that took me years to figure out.
So, in my previous employer, we had this thing called V2Mom, where we talk about what is your vision, what are your values, methods on how do you go about it, what are your obstacles, what are the results.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about it. Then I want to have a very simple representation of this. Then I ran into a founder of a startup, and he was talking about how he runs his business with OKR.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why don't I have my own OKRs? I should have my own OKRs.
Sure.
And if I'm thinking about a specific opportunity, I should go to the hiring manager with an OKR, because think about this: any opportunity, compensation is, is only 1/4 of the opportunity, right? There are resources, there is support, there is coaching, there is mentor.
Yeah.
It's a big pie chart, and oftentimes hiring manager kind of falls into, I just gotta hire this person, and then I'm gonna
Right.
check the box, and
Right.
then we usually fall into that trap of, okay, I just got hired to fill a head count.
Right.
So how do we really force ourselves to think outside headcount? So that kind of led me to this OKR thing. And then
Yeah.
I was reading a book last night. I'm like, wow, he talks about OKR.
Mhm.
This is incredible. So let's have a conversation on it. You kind of taken it to the next level. I really want to,
So
unpack this OKR thing.
So we'll come back to candidate market fit because there's a few more words, but let's jump into this now because this is important. So let's say you're interviewing with a company. What I tell people to do, it sounds like this is what you do already, is check out that job description and privately initially start writing your own version of it. What I call a job mission with OKRs, which is what do you think this job is and what do you think the accountabilities are? I think the audience knows OKR's objective and key result, right? So, what are you going to deliver? What are the outcomes you're going to be responsible for? Do you think? Do you think this role should be responsible for? And then the first benefit of drafting this privately initially is that it will surface really good questions for you to ask. Many times people don't have good probing questions to ask when they're doing the interview, when they're the interview subject. So I want them to do that. That helps you show up well. And that leads to more interviews typically. And you ask more questions. And I say like 2 or 3 interviews in, depending on the number of interviews and so on, I want you to then ask the hiring manager for a separate private meeting over Zoom or coffee, whatever the case may be, and say, listen, I've thought about the role and I put something together. I want to see if I've understood it correctly. And then you say, here's just this draft of this thing. It's called a job mission with OKRs. And Arun, it blows them away, just as you were saying, blows them away. I had a senior guy at Amazon who's a longtime council member tell me, he's hired like over 2,000 people. If anyone ever did this, I would hire them on the spot. Okay. and then, so it's really impressed them, which often will help lead to that offer. But it also does another thing, which is how many times have we taken a job that we thought was job A and it turned out to be job B, right? So this gives a really concrete way to get alignment and clarity. Oh, no, the job really isn't that. It's really more this or that. OKR is not that important. This is saying, oh, how many times, I like a product leader was recently fired and I asked her what happened. And she said, well, it turns out I was hired for a product strategy job, but they didn't want me to be involved at all in the product development. So when I actually started building real products, it threatened everybody and they fired me. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if she had done the job mission with OKRs, there's a chance they would have gotten more clarity. I mean, the company was stupid in the way they designed that job, but maybe she would have been more clear about that and they could have had that discussion. That's so important. But then, Arun, to your point, if you do get that offer, then you've got this job mission with OKRs. And I tell people in the book, look, comp is important, but really much more important to me is whether you're set up to succeed in that role. Because if you succeed, comp will follow. So I want you to say, okay, what are the budget, resources, and support that I need to be able to execute on these OKRs that we've agreed I'm going to be responsible for, right? And companies are blown away by that. Like during the salary negotiation, you're talking about, okay, can we talk about the training budget for my team? Can we talk about what kind of mentoring am I going to be getting? What kind of mentoring can I give to my team? What kinds of other resources can we tap into? Anything you need to succeed. And of course, if you're an individual contributor, this is going to look very different than if you're coming in as a chief product officer or a CEO, right? You're going to have a lot more to say. But college students, like I work with college students, when you're interviewing for that first job, talk to them about training, support, mentoring, what kinds of things, show that you care about that. It blows them away. And of course it does. And then, by the way, if you do this, companies are often a little bit more amenable to paying you a little bit more. So I negotiate the budget, resources, and support first, and then say, let's circle back to the comp. Okay, so you offered a base of 300. Can we move? I was hoping we could do something more like 325, whatever, and you go from there.
I just want to pop in here really quickly because it's kind of triggering something, which is there is a shift in the marketplace on hiring where it is my belief that hiring managers are getting free consulting from their candidate pool.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I was talking to some people the other day, and they had been through 7 interviews, and now
Yeah.
they're at a panel, and the panel is essentially build me the strategy for the job that I was hired for, not the job I'm hiring you for, the job I want, the job that I have. And when I looked at what was being asked, I thought, this is robbery. Like,
It
you
is.
should be charging
It
someone.
is.
And so navigating that, I think, in the face of what you're talking about, which you should do the homework anyway. You should be prepared
Yeah.
to have a strategy for the role that you are being hired for. But this is a real thing right now, which is like, I don't know how I'm going to solve this problem. So I'm going to ask my candidate pool, and whichever one of the people does the best job according to whatever nonsense KPR or OKRs I have in mind gets the job. But it's a dynamic that I think a lot of people are really
Yeah.
surprised by right now.
Yeah, let's speak to that, because look, it's one thing I'm telling the job, candidate, put some time into thinking about the role. Okay. But if the company says to you, hey, we would like you to give us, give us a presentation on, develop a strategy for this product, or tell us what you think, the M&A strategy should be, or give us a go-to-market strategy for this thing, right? And they expect you to actually put together, essentially, to do real work, 5, 10, 20, 30 hours of work, and present it to them.
Yeah.
In that case, I say, listen, look, I love that, I understand why you're asking to see the work. That's commendable, but this should be compensated. And the best companies out there, they actually offer to do that. They'll pay. And again, I'm separating this from thinking about the actual job itself to actually doing the work of the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're asking you to do the work of the job, they should be compensating you. Okay. And I can't tell you, I've heard of situations, we all know this, where they have 2 or 3 people come, they do their presentations, and guess what? They don't hire anybody, but they take those presentations and then go and apply them. They just got a bunch of free consulting.
Mm-hmm.
That is a low integrity move, let me tell you. And, it's out of bounds, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'll give a definite example here. I was talking to one of our colleagues in our support group, and this person got a job interview, panel interview, and an exercise for an organization that is dealing with the Doge challenge. So they have no idea how to deal with Doge.
Right.
And the barrage of questions that Elon and crew are asking every day. So the exercise revolved around a fictitious scenario around how would you think about a strategy to deal with Doge. And this is a great example where, folks, if I were there, I would ask, hey, I'm going to charge you for this. I'm not going to do free consulting work for you, because at the end of the day, I'm going to present an idea to you, and you're just going to use my idea along with all the candidates' idea, and you're going to form an opinion. So, Phyl, what you're saying is real, and a lot of job seekers are facing it. And my coaching, my guidance, as somebody on their side, is ask for being paid for the work, because you're doing real work.
And just to be clear, if we're doing a case study exercise like the interview, I want you to walk me through over the next few minutes how you would think about this. That's fair. You're not going to charge for that. But if they want you to actually prepare a presentation or report on how they should respond to Doge, that's real work, right? And yeah, they should pay. And look, maybe they don't pay you full value, but they pay you. We'll give you $100 an hour, or we'll give you 500. They should at least do something to demonstrate that they understand they're getting value here. The companies that offer that generally, they're serious about hiring, and they generally do that. Others, they're using this as a way to get free consulting, and it's a tough world, and I understand why they do that, but it's out of bounds.
So, assuming that our audience in their journey, they have found their right job, they have we talked a little bit about negotiations, how one has to look beyond
Yeah.
the compensation angle here. I think there's a very interesting thing, that is who you gonna go work for, the hiring manager. And you talk a little bit about it in your podcasts, in your books,
Yeah.
right? It's very important to do that due diligence.
Yeah.
And so could you talk a little bit about it? I mean, you talk about network, resources,
Yeah.
really thought process. So would love to hear more on this topic.
So I want candidates to do more research about the companies and the people they're going to work for. And I kind of walk through that in the book. And in particular, if you're starting to get very serious and there's an offer coming, I want you to do some back channel due diligence on your potential boss. Okay. Meaning, go find someone who's worked with them in the past, right? And just ask them, tell me a little bit about this person. So we had a member who was a CTO who was working in e-commerce and was moving into a software company. And he was actually taking a VP, if I remember correctly, a VP of product role. So he was taking a bit of a step down in title, but he wanted to move industries and e-commerce wasn't doing well. So that made sense. Sometimes a step down makes sense in a long-term reorganization of your career. But he did the background due diligence. And like one of the things that he heard about his would-be new boss is that she doesn't like, which I totally understand because I don't either, but she doesn't like people who are know-it-alls. She likes people who listen. And this was important because there was a little of sense that he might be defensive because he had a larger job before, and he's now working for someone who could have worked for him in the past, right? And so knowing that that's a sort of a flag for her, he worked harder at not trying to like prove his smarts and instead listening and being more collaborative, and that ended up working really well. We had another situation where it was kind of a different situation where the person was already, this was a person actually working already. I think I shared the story in the book, but I don't think I shared the company name, at a prominent tech company. Okay. As a VP, and she got a new boss from Amazon. Right. So she reached out to me and said, do you know anyone at Amazon who actually has worked with this guy, or at least can give me a sense of the Amazon way? Because as you may know, Amazon has a whole approach. They use the 6-page document, the way they run meetings and make decisions. So fortunately, by luck, I actually happened to know someone who had worked very closely with this guy, But I thought that was a brilliant question that she asked me. It's like, yeah, like, so you should do due diligence on a new boss, whether you're joining a company or a new boss is joining your company. Either way, you've got to do that back channel due diligence. And it was really helpful because she was having some challenges with this new boss, and talking to some people who would work with him, they kind of unlocked the code for how to work with him. And that made a huge difference. She ended up getting a promotion, and, things went really, really well. So again, like what we're recommending here is fairly simple, right? But the idea is don't do this alone. Ask for help. Try to be smart about the human environment that you're entering and understanding who people are and how you can be most effective with them.
I was thinking about, I'm listening to what you're saying, Phyl, and I'm thinking about the people that I've heard from who've listened to the podcast.
Yeah.
And the number one thing we have heard is, I'm scared.
Yeah.
And when you act from a place of scarcity or fear, you inherently make terrible decisions. Like it's just the way it is. And so while I am fully in alignment with what you're saying, I also worry that we are entering into an unstable job market, an unstable economic outlook, an unstable political environment. And like this core instability is going to rock people's ability to do exactly what you're saying, which is very intelligent and absolutely the right approach. But how do you counteract?
That is why they need a job search counsel, Nicole, even more than ever right now. Absolutely.
Right.
Yes, because, and I say this in the book, like, I say, I know some readers may be tempted to just read the book and try to do this alone. And I just want you, it's just going to be harder. You're going to feel that fear more. You're going to still feel the fear if you're on a job search council, but you're going to have that group with you. And that's going to really take the edge off of that. And you'll be able to walk into those interviews with those people metaphorically, literally on your shoulders, right?
Mm-hmm.
As well as all the other people you've talked to and you're listening to, or your whole village. We have different exercises. I have an exercise in the book called Gratitude House, which helps you think about all the people in your life that have helped you all along the way, from your third grade teacher, whatever it might be, right? And I do that in part to, and I ask people, when you go into interviews, bring your Gratitude House list with you. Like, remember, you've got a whole village that have been there with you for many years. Even the most introverted people, and people say, is this only for extroverts? No, actually, introverts tend to like this better, because what I'm talking about here is not like traditional networking, although there's always that component in a job search. This is relationship building in a small environment where you create trust and real, one of the things that I love is people tell me these are lifelong friends they've made. They keep in touch. They continue to meet after they get jobs. They're like, and that brings me so much joy. And so, yes, because we're in an unstable environment, Nicole, because of both the political situation and the economic situation, we need this more than ever. We need that support group. We cannot and should not do this alone. And if you do it with others, it unlocks for certainly all the things I'm describing. But you know what? You and your council will also invent new things, right? That's the idea here. I'm not trying to say, here's the limit or whatever. Like, here's the environment and some of the tools so that you can go and really own this and create, continue the creative process.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go one more step further and be even more provocative. I'm going to say, folks, JSCs are lifelong.
Yeah.
The disruptions that we are seeing in the marketplace because of the technology paradigm shift, it's not a 20-year, 10-year disruption. It's like a 10-month, a year-long disruption. So you want to have a JC around you all the time for next foreseeable future.
A job search council, a career council, a support group of some kind will be de rigueur. It will be required as we move into this tumultuous period. And it will become, it's already, we are really in the midst of a growing movement. My mom started that first council in 1960, but then YPO started forums in the 1970s. I started the councils in the early 2000s for Silicon Valley. Now there are many kinds of things out there, and there's Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In program. This is a movement that is happening here. And it's like where coaching was 20 or 30 years ago, right? Most people didn't have a coach. Now, many people have had a coach at least once, right? Well, I tell you, 20 to 30 years from now, Arun, everyone's going to have a council, And what I say to people today is get in on this early. It gives you advantage now, right? Make it happen now. And that's also why the job search councils are free, is I really wanted to take all kinds of obstacles away, because the way people pay in the job search councils is with their commitment to each other, is with their time and attention to really support each other. That's the currency, right? And so I wanted to take all the other obstacles out of it and maximize the chances. And I'll just tell you a quick story. A woman, Mary, went through the program a year ago, got a job, loved the job, found a good job, found a job she wanted, negotiated well. A month into it, Arun, her husband in his 40s, right? And they have a young kid, had a stroke. Okay. He was an engineer at Google or something like that. Like, wow, like that's not common. Obviously, it throws her into crisis. She talks to the CEO, who she built a great relationship with through the interviewing process and the job mission with OKRs. He's like, yeah, do what you need to do. They were very supportive. And then here's the magic, Arun. Because she had gone through this and learned to ask for help and have this experience on her own, she created what she called a health crisis council. She put several of her good friends together and had them work together through this with her. There is no amount of money that is more exciting to me than that one story.
Yeah,
right?
That's so cool.
That is what I'm talking about. This is a cultural shift that I'm hoping to contribute to and support more people to embrace. Because it is life-changing and lifelong. Arun, thank you for pointing that out.
And it is the perfect antidote to AI. It is the perfect antidote to asking your computer to solve your problems.
Yeah. And again, AI is there and I want you to work with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't replace
That's right.
It's going to make this even more important.
Yeah.
more important. Okay.
Yeah. What an awesome,
So
awesome
Phyl,
way to wrap.
we are at the top of the hour.
Yeah.
We would love we would love to bring you back. It's actually a request to talk about your new book that
Happy
you're
to.
launching. That's going to be our next episode. We are so grateful for your time, and also we're so grateful for the book that you've written. It's
Well, thank
highly
you.
recommend to anybody.
Please,
Anybody.
please, people, get it, read it, change your life, and every dollar from the book sales goes into the free program. So, thank you for spreading the word. And I'm so thrilled. It's let me tell you, as a business book writer, it's very rare that people tell you, I couldn't put your book down. You know what I mean? It's not that's very high praise that you stayed up all night long. Holy moly, Arun, thank you. It's a beach read.
But bring a highlighter.
Bring a highlighter, exactly. Well, thank you. I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you, Phyl. And we want to thank our audience for listening to us, giving us their time, and time's the most valuable commodity in the planet. So thank you, audience, and we will see you soon in our next episode. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.